So welcome again, everyone. Thank you for joining our information session today. We will be discussing the divorce process end to end and how divorce.com can help you get through that process in a way that is less costly, takes less time, and hopefully is a little less stressful than what you might have heard other traditional divorce processes look like. So we are going to do a little bit of background about divorce.com. Our mission at divorce.com is to create generational change from the impact divorce has on families by reducing time, cost, uncertainty, and unnecessary trauma. We do that by offering an online platform and services to help you get through your divorce. That includes offering divorce resources. We do paperwork generation. We offer mediation sessions. We also have access to divorce experts, and then we do filing assistance. And all along the way, we help you get guided through that process through a case management team. Alicia's joining us here today as a case manager. We'll do introduction shortly, but that is what we do at divorce.com, and we're so glad that you are joining us. Okay, to get to introductions, I am Nicole. I lead our marketing team at divorce.com. And I am joined here today with Alysia, who is a case manager at divorce.com. That means if any of you do get your divorce through us, you could potentially be assigned Alysia, and she would guide you through the process, help to reduce a lot of the overwhelm and the complexity, explain step-by-step what to expect. She has a certification as a certified divorce professional. And she has been working at our company for 4 years now and has helped thousands of couples get divorced. So she has a ton of experience. We're so appreciative of you being here today, Alysia. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited
Yeah,
to be here.
I know. It would be really crazy if someone who's watching this eventually gets assigned to you. So welcome. We are going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the meat of the content. We have received a ton of questions from a lot of you, and we have done our best to try to incorporate the answers to that in the presentation that we'll be sharing today. But we also understand that just listening to us probably might spur some more questions. So we encourage you to drop those questions in the Q&A section in your Zoom window. We'll be monitoring those throughout, and then at the end of the session, if we have some time, we'll try to get to them. The small note on that is we cannot provide legal advice. So if you do have specific questions that are very unique to your circumstances, we will not be able to answer that, but keep that in mind as you're submitting your questions. Okay. Let's get started. We want to do a poll and get a sense of where all of you are in your divorce process. A big piece of that is whether or not you have had that discussion yet with your spouse about the possibility of divorce. So you should see shortly a little pop-up on your Zoom screen that is asking whether or not you've had that discussion. If you could just say yes or no to that, that will help us get a sense of where you are at in the process. And then also you'll hear later today how that involvement with your spouse and that relationship can really play a critical role in how the divorce process plays out. So we want you to be thinking about that at the beginning of this divorce process. Okay, so it looks like almost all of you have had that discussion. That's really good to hear. For those of you who have not yet had that discussion, maybe you're still early on in the process, just trying to understand your options. But it is important, and we'll get to why you will eventually need to have a discussion with the spouse about the possibility of divorce. Okay, let's move along to why you all are here. We want to walk you through step by step what to expect in the divorce process, explain a little bit about each of those steps, what to be thinking about, and then also how divorce.com could fit in for you. The first thing that we really want people to be considering when they're going through the divorce process is what type of divorce you want to pursue. And there's essentially two different paths you can take here. The first is trying to reach an agreement with your spouse, doing that cooperatively. That doesn't necessarily mean that you and your spouse right now are in full agreement. It just means that you are going to make that attempt. And then the other option is lawyering up, fighting it through the court system and potentially letting a judge decide. We encourage people to try to work things out, at least to start, to see if you're able to do that, because it has some benefits. Like it's a lot less time if you go that route. It's a lot less expensive. And so Alysia, our expert here, I wanted to ask you a few questions about, this concept of agreement and really trying to negotiate with your spouse. There were a few questions that people had around what agreement is. Does it mean that you and your spouse need to split things evenly down the middle, or is there some other permutation that it could take?
So no, it doesn't. Finding an agreement on how to divide something always means it will be split 50-50. For example, in a divorce, a judge will usually divide marital property equitably, which means fairly, but not necessarily equally. We want our customers to aim for what each of you would deem fair, which will vary by couples and their circumstances.
Okay, so it sounds like fair is the word for people to keep in mind, not necessarily a complete separation 50-50. So that's good, because there are a lot of questions, and we'll talk about this later, about the division of things and how to approach that. So keep in mind you want to aim for fair. Okay, very hot topic that has come up a lot, especially when you're considering which path you're going to go down. What is the difference in the time it takes, or what kind of expectation should people have if they are going to try to be cooperative with their spouse?
It does vary state by state. With a cooperative divorce, this will take about 3 to 6 months to finalize your divorce. Whereas if you're fighting it out with attorneys, this could take up to 1 to 2 years or even longer.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's a very long time. And then I think a very similar question, also had a ton of these, is how is the difference in cost? What does that look like if you're going to try to go the cooperative approach or fight it out?
Our packages range in price from $500 all the way up to $2,000 for an uncontested divorce. If you choose the contested way, it can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 or more. And that would probably be per person as well.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. I'm sure that's a big consideration for a lot of people who are listening right now, what this cost is going to look like. Many of you are thinking about what life is going to look like as you're starting over. And if you're able to keep a lot of those assets after the fact, you'll be able to start fresh in a way that is a little bit easier than if you're spending 20, 40,000 or more. So a big consideration. And then the last question that I have on this topic of which type of divorce people can pursue, and the fact that you've seen so many people get a divorce, do you have any insights from people about making this decision and trying to figure out if they should, hire lawyers, fight it out, go through the sort of traditional approach, or, maybe go the other route and be more cooperative? Like, what have you seen in your experience? Like, why do people choose one or the other?
So I think everyone has heard all the horror stories from friends, family about divorces lasting 4 to 5 years or costing upwards to $40,000-$50,000 or more. So the uncontested divorce process just sounds more appealing.
Yeah, for sure. I guess time, money, all of that, and the fact that if you do go the contested route, a judge could potentially decide that outcome and you lose that control over, how you're going to handle the house or what you're going to do with the time spent with your children. So really appreciate your experience and wisdom on that. Okay, let's move along. For those of you who are in attendance who are considering the cooperative approach, which many of you are, one of the first things you're going to have to think about tactically is starting on your paperwork. That means getting all the information that you need to fill out the forms to submit to the court. In that process, you're going to need to be prepared to talk about or answer questions related to yourself, your spouse, your children, and then key decisions in your divorce. So, Alysia, for people who are thinking about this and thinking about, okay, what does that mean? What forms do I need? If they use divorce.com, what exactly can they expect in terms of considering that? And how does that differ state by state?
So our platform knows which forms are required. when you'll be filing. This will take the stress away from any of the customers because we have the resources and the knowledge of what forms are needed for initial filing and finalization. We take the stress away from customers. We help you with this step-by-step process.
Okay, great. That's really great to know. And we do offer services in all 50 states. So if you're wondering about that, we are able to accommodate that and get you the right forms, as Alysia just suggested. A question that I wanted to get to that a few people asked is, if they're stuck on a decision, as we mentioned, there are some key decisions that need to come up in this process, and someone is considering submitting the paperwork without answering everything. What are like how would you what considerations should people have if they are stuck?
So we suggest that all the forms that we submit are completed to the best of their ability. You can save questions in the questionnaire, but when you file, you'll need to answer everything completely.
Okay. That is helpful. And we'll talk about getting stuck and, some solutions for getting unstuck. But paperwork is critical. It's one of the main components of making the divorce official. So we offer all these services to get you that paperwork generated, do it in a way that's state specific, personalized to your unique circumstances. And it's all done through a pretty smart questionnaire to make that process seamless. Okay, so we did the poll at the beginning, start of this session, about those of you who have had that conversation with your spouse. It was nice to see that many of you have already done that. We want to talk a little bit about this involvement of your spouse and the implication of it. So, Alysia, first question here. Can someone complete the divorce process without any involvement in their spouse?
They can complete our questionnaire if they have the spouse's personal information. For example, we'll need like the spouse's address, employment address, salary, social security number. But we do need the spouse to sign and agree to all the terms in the agreement before it can be finalized with the court. I've noticed with couples, their priority is to stay away from the judge deciding on their behalf. This drives our customers to cooperate and come to an agreement.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? You're going to have that conversation and get to that agreement, and that takes some communication. Another question, just about using the divorce.com platform. What does that look like for couples who want to do this together?
We offer a way for you to invite your spouse so they can have visibility in the process. They can attend workshops, mediation sessions. They can also have their own login and help fill out the information of the questionnaire with the questions that pertain to them.
Oh, good. Okay. So for those of you who are worried about, okay, what is all this information that's specific to the spouse, that invitation could help alleviate some of that. Okay, on the other end of the spectrum, for people who maybe haven't had a lot of involvement with their spouse, there's a few of you who have asked if the spouse has literally not been in contact in many, many years. Are there options available for people who are in that circumstance?
There is. We do offer a process for the circumstance that we do support, and we do offer this process to our customers, but we only offer this in a select number of states.
Okay, it's a different process if someone can't find their spouse or hasn't been in communication. Okay, good to know if that is something that you're currently dealing with. Let us move along to, oh, sorry, went too far. This concept of agreement and what happens when you and your spouse currently cannot agree on one or several aspects of those key decisions. Alysia, I'd love for you to walk us through in this cooperative approach, which mediation can help solve some of that disagreement. Can you explain what mediation is? I feel like this is a loaded legal word that not everyone really understands. Give us a little bit of background on what someone should expect if they're going to pursue mediation.
So it's a way for a neutral party to help both spouses come to an agreement. If you and your spouse are not quite in agreement on a couple things like the children's visitation schedule, division of property, assets, debt. The mediator meets with both parties where the parties can discuss the dispute and explore a variety of solutions or negotiate a jointly acceptable resolution of issues in conflict.
Oh, good. Okay. So these sessions, there's a mediator, they're facilitating. Sounds like both parties need to be present to get that done. And then you can work through, what are some of the common things that people discuss in mediation?
So with mediation, there is visitation schedule, there's division of property, assets, and debt.
Okay, great. Maybe spousal support, child support, things along those lines too.
Yep.
Yeah. We know that each of you probably have your own set of circumstances that you're still trying to work through, and mediation is a really good solution. Can you talk a little bit about hiring a lawyer and going that route versus mediation? Like, why would a couple choose to use mediation to get through some of this disagreement?
Mediation is designed for both parties to come to an agreement more quickly, which leads to lower costs, less time needed to finalize a divorce. It also tends to lead to higher adherence to the agreement post-divorce, since each party agreed to the terms versus letting the judge decide.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I guess that makes sense. If you're ultimately signing off on the thing that you were disagreeing about and finally came to an agreement, that likely means you're going to follow through, right? As opposed to someone telling you that this is what it's going to be. Okay, very good to know. Is there anything else that people should be aware of if they are going to use divorce.com to do mediation? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, once you decide to use mediation, you can schedule a session over Zoom to discuss the key decisions with your spouse. Please understand that mediation is essentially negotiation between both parties. It is best to prepare for each session. As part of the mediation process, you should really think about where are you willing to compromise and where are you not. Prepare for your session and be in the mindset of compromise. The mediator will help facilitate this discussion.
Oh, good. Okay. I heard that word compromise a few times, so I just want to call that out for everyone. There is, in order to get to that agreement, there is sometimes needing to know what is vital to you, the thing that you're not willing to budge on, and then where you are willing to compromise. And because part of divorce is that negotiation, you have to approach it in that way. So I think mediation does a really good job of helping people work through that negotiation in a way that maybe isn't as stressful or tension filled, versus when you have two lawyers who are both kind of fighting against each other as opposed to really working towards that common ground. So hopefully for those of you who are in this situation where you're like, okay, right now my spouse and I have not yet decided how we're going to split the house or what we're going to do with 401ks, or a variety of other things. You're hearing that mediation possibly could be a solution for you to work through those disagreements.
Yes.
Okay, so some questions, as I mentioned at the top of the call, when it relates to legal advice or legal questions, are very specific to an individual's case. And, if that is coming up, we want to understand what are the options available to us. As I mentioned before, we've been helping couples for actually 20 years get divorced. And in many of those cases, that is without a lawyer. But that doesn't necessarily mean that lawyers don't have a place or there isn't a time in which someone might need to speak with a lawyer. So what exactly are those times? What would make someone potentially interested in reaching out to a lawyer, and what options are available on divorce.com for them to do that?
So they can seek we have an attorney network they can take advantage of. We have an attorney consultation, which is a 45-minute session with a family law attorney. And then we also have an on-demand legal advice chat feature for more clarity if they need
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah, that sounds great, especially if it's just like one question that you need to get. Um, answered. Another question, and I kind of referenced this in the mediation discussion, that there's a lot of questions from people about dividing things,
Mhm.
specifically as it relates to the financial aspect of divorce. Do you have any other options available, or could you speak to how people can think about getting some further advice as it relates to the financial piece of their divorce?
Yeah, you can seek advice from, we have a CDFA, a financial advisor, to help understand the financials, the aspects of the case. You can discuss financial strategy. Topics may include alimony, debt, child support, budgeting, assets, liabilities, investing, retirement, insurance, tax. You can use this call to get guidance on approaching financial questions in the questionnaire, or better prepare for mediation with your spouse.
Oh, okay. And you said a call. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we are just right now very limited. We're offering a 15-minute session with a CDFA, and they can schedule this through their account and schedule they can schedule it in their account, and also schedule like a good time and date with this person that it fits their
Okay.
schedule.
Okay. And that's free, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that is potentially very interesting to many of you who have those questions about dividing your assets and debt.
Mhm.
Okay, let's keep moving along. If you've been following along, we've been kind of moving through the divorce process, right? You're starting to figure out how you're going to approach divorce, then you're getting all the paperwork completed. We generate the paperwork on your behalf, and then we also offer filing assistance. So that can be a short time, a long time, depending on the state. But Alysia, I'd love for you to first address whether or not an attorney is needed to file with the court.
Um, uh, the majority of the US, you don't need an attorney to file with the court. We have 20 years of experience working with the court clerks to file your paperwork and get you guys divorced. The filing assistance is actually a major reason people choose to use our services, because we're taking that stress away from them, and we're the ones that are prepping the paperwork. We know what needs to be filed with the court for each step of the process.
Okay. Yeah, and just to sort of, you all are looking at the screen, but just to reiterate that process, as I said, we generate the paperwork. You will need to sign that, and then depending on which state you're in, your spouse will also need to sign that. We submit that to the court to open the case. Once that's submitted, then either your spouse will need to do the signature in response, or if it's a joint filing state, they will have already done that. And then we do communication to let you know what final steps are needed. And all of that is varied by state, but we're there with you step by step so that you know what to expect. And on that note, Alysia, can you explain a little bit more about waiting periods?
Yeah, so in some states, separation period is required prior to filing. Also,
Oh,
in many states, there's a delay between paperwork when it's filed and when the divorce can be finalized. We can help communicate those timeframes with you. They vary from no waiting period to 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, even 180 days before you can finalize your divorce.
okay. And then once a couple goes through that waiting period, what's that last step look like? What should they expect?
The judge will review your agreement and make sure everything seems fair. Once the judge approves, the divorce will become official.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say, and what we want to make all of you aware of, is you're able to use our platform and our services to go through the entire divorce process and ultimately come out of it divorced, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just want to make sure people understand that, because I think divorce is a complex topic. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's this legal process that can feel overwhelming. And we are here to try to walk you step by step through that process and do it in a way that is less costly, takes less time, as we mentioned at the top of the call. and hopefully in a way that's less stressful, where you're not fighting things out and heightening emotions and stress. Our aim is to try to do this in a way that reduces stress so that you can move on to the next chapter of your life. Okay, so that is, I'm just checking my time here. We are kind of running a little bit over, but I have seen a few questions come in. So we're going to transition. Maybe we'll get to one or two. Okay, Alysia, a question for you is it possible for me to generate my own paperwork?
Yes, it is. So with our questionnaire, you'll complete our questionnaire and we will take all the answers and populate your forms and you'll be able to file on your own.
Oh, great. Okay. Another question that came up is, do I still need to hire a lawyer if I use divorce.com?
Um, if you choose to, you can. We have those resources. People would retain a lawyer if they wanted, like once we generate your paperwork, they may want to have an attorney review the paperwork before we send it into the court for filing.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about this, there's definitely times when you might want to consult, right? Get a piece of advice or get that review of the document. So there's a place possibly in this
Mhm.
process for you to consult with an attorney, but it is not required. I think I want to make that clear to people that you could potentially go through this entire process without having met with an attorney. It's kind of up to you, your circumstances, and ultimately how complex or how specific your questions are that are legal in nature. But
Mhm.
you could go through this process without hiring an attorney. Okay, last question that we have time for. How is it best to document agreements prior to filing? Maybe talk a little bit about our questionnaire.
Um, Best to document. So the best thing to do is to come into an agreement with your spouse. Get on the same page, make sure there's transparency, and have a plan. And then that way you can transpose that information into the questionnaire, and then we can have that generated as one of your forms. It'd be part of your
Okay.
agreement.
Yeah, and just so that people understand, our platform has this questionnaire that asks you specific questions, as I mentioned, about you, yourself, your spouse, and those key decisions. So as you're moving through the questionnaire, that is exactly where you have the opportunity to document those agreements. So, for example, just to make this real for people, if you're making a decision about selling your home, there would be a section in our questionnaire for that. Or if you're deciding that you're going to jointly share custody of your children, there would be a section in our questionnaire to answer all of that. And then we generate the paperwork for you and go through the filing process, as we mentioned. Okay, we are coming up on time. Alysia, I appreciate you. Um, sorry, should have moved to this as we were answering questions, but um, we're getting to the end of time. I really want to thank you, Alysia, for sharing your wisdom with all of the people who have joined. Just for anyone who's listening, we are really appreciative of your time. Thank you so much for asking all of the great questions that you have. You can check us out for more information at divorce.com, as our name is so magnanimously called. And you can also call into our customer support center. You'll see the number down below. Write us or just reach out and we will try to get any of your questions answered. But thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time today, for joining us. And we'll be in touch with the recording of this webinar and any follow-ups that could potentially be useful to you as you're considering what to do next in your divorce. So thank you all.
Thank you.